oddly, oh, Donna has something to say. Well, Donna's getting the mic. I'll say this. I've been going through a little bit of a tough time myself right now, and sometimes I'll text with my mom, and my mom, who is not a believer at all, she went through Catholic and Protestant school and whatever in church. She has said to me, find your strength in the Bible. And that to me, I'm like, all right, God, if you're talking to me through my mom, then maybe, we can use it. If he can use a donkey, he can use anybody, I guess, so.
When you were talking about strength, I think of, there's a scripture that says that we have to strengthen ourselves in the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's many times, sometimes you don't always have someone in the Lord that you can bounce yourself off on or get to pray with or whatever, encourage or whatever. And so there's times you have to strengthen yourself in the Lord. But then I also see that the strength comes from the body. Mm-hmm. Because I have seen people lift me up when I've been in a place where I just needed to hear either a word of encouragement, or I just needed someone to pray with me, or I just needed someone to cry with. There's strength in the body, and as long as we stay united to one another, and there's times when we all go our own way and we all do our own thing, and there's not always times that we can always gather with one another. But if your heart is right because you're united with the people that you love, your church family, you connect. Mm-hmm. You find a way to connect one way or another.
Yes. And that helps us to build that wall, to guard our heart. And when I say build a wall, I'm not saying that we're keeping people out.
No.
But but we have to protect ourselves from those little foxes. Right. From those things that can just creep in.
Yeah. Can I just say something
Sure.
about your comment about your mom? I have found that the hardest people for me to talk to God about are those that have been brought up in a Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
Older, because I think the fear of the Lord was literally drummed into them physically.
Sure.
And there's a resistance that comes
Mm-hmm.
up, and if you try to introduce just something of God, there's a wall of resistance there because whatever, they got hurt,
Right.
they got injured, they come to a point of hearing things that you don't believe.
Right. Even on my dad's side of the family, that's exactly what it is. There's many people on my dad's side of the family, which is very large, because of things that happened in the past with the church, and they just have they have no desire.
Yeah.
Because there's that hurt. So I completely understand where. Sure.
I think along with what Donna had to say about a local body, I think it's God's design plan. There's two things. One, David strengthened himself in the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
But there are times when God desires you to be able to get things on your own. But then there are other times when God wants you to begin to realize that you need counsel of many. And the thought came to me, in the multitude of counsel, there is strength.
Yep.
In the multitude of counsel. But I want to read it in this translation. This is the Revised Standard. Without counsel, plans go wrong. But with many advisors, they succeed. And sometimes we get plans to do this and that, we get these thoughts that are constantly bombarding us. I want to do this. I want to do that. I think I should do this. And we even mistranslate the words so many times in cases like that. That's where multitude of counsel comes in strong, you know. And the best thing to do is to look for somebody who you know is not going to agree with you. Get somebody who's going to challenge what you're thinking.
Yeah.
That way it'll straighten your thinking out, you know, so.
I had a whole other thought. I actually wrote this down in a couple different translations. Because when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about, when I was reading it all, it was talking about guarding our hearts. And one of the things, the Message talks about God's law. And when I thought about God's law, I was thinking, well, the law is written. It's written for us. But it's also to be kept in our hearts. You know, and I think in the multitude of counsel, they can show us what's really in our heart. You know, if they challenge us. You know, if they're going to just agree with you, they're just going to, you know, you're going to be like, oh, I was right, yes. And I go the wrong way, you know, take a wrong turn. But I wrote this down. In order to keep the law, one must read the word and immerse himself or herself in it. But then I wrote this question down. How do you do this without it becoming just something you have to do instead of something you desire to do? You know, I think for some of us, I think we go through seasons where it just is like, oh, I have to do this today. Yeah. You know. Dry period. Sure. Dry period. But then we just have to come back to a love of the word. And I think I had gotten into a season for that myself, you know, before I started doing this study, because it was just, it started to feel like something I had to do. And I wasn't guarding my heart well enough. Yeah, we all know what the church has gone through in the last couple of years. And I did not guard myself well enough with all of that going on. And I'm exposing myself right now just to say that was a really hard season for me. And I am so thankful that you all have just been there for Tim and I, because it was really tough. It was really tough. Oh. All right. Moving on. Because I'm not going to cry. Dang it. All right. Does anybody have anything else that they wanted to add? Okay. I'm just going to move on to verse 5. Evil men do not understand justice, but those who seek the Lord understand it fully. The Passion Translation says, justice never makes sense to men devoted to darkness, but those tenderly devoted to the Lord can understand justice perfectly. Justice, I found, means just behavior or treatment. Righteousness, the quality of being just. I think. Yep. In the Strong's, it means law, regulation, teaching, instruction, often referring to the 5 books of Moses in whole and in part. And of course, for me anyways, the first verse I thought of was Micah 6:8. Which is, we have showed you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. To act justly. I think we all have to decide what to act justly means to the Lord, in each situation. There's just a lot going on in this world, and I feel like everybody's looking for some sort of justice for some people group, for themselves, as they interpret. Yeah, and it's, it's funny. I saw on, there was the whole woman march yesterday, and somebody had posted a video of all these people saying why they were walking, and I'm thinking to myself, okay. You're walking for a million different reasons, but there's no focus. My cousin posted something, and he's not a believer, but what he said was just to say, okay, well, you're walking now, but what do we do moving forward? And we all have to seek him. If we're believers of him, we seek him. And seek is to go in search or quest of. So we all have to go in search of him. Yeah, of course.
I think because you brought up the issue about the marching and all of that, the Lord said a couple of things. First, he said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Treat your neighbor like you'd have them to treat you.
Sure.
But he gave us a real good picture when he said this. They asked him about the law and living under the law, okay? He said the first and great command of the Lord. Jesus said, don't tell me you love me if you don't do what I say.
Yep.
Okay? It goes that way in any aspect. Don't tell me you care for me if behind my back you're sticking me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that's what Jesus is saying in plain language. He's saying, if you really love me, if you really care about me, you'll do what I say. So this is what I say. He said he's not bringing the whole old covenant up front. But he said this. He said, the first and great commandment is this. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. If you love God, you love his ways. Mm-hmm. If you love God, you love his words. If you love God, you want to do what he says.
Yep.
Okay? Then he said, the second command is like the first. He jumped all the other 8 commands in between 1 and 10. He jumped those 8. Thou shalt not kill. We know the whole thing.
Yeah.
He jumped all the way down to the last one, and then he said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Mm-hmm. Well, if you obey the first one, you'll see where you fit in this whole program.
Yep.
It isn't all about me. Mm-hmm. It's about him. Because love for him overwhelms who you think you are. And when you see that, then you can love your neighbor as yourself because you see where you are. Because you love to have your neighbor in the same relationship that you are with him. That's where it's at.
Yep.
And everybody else wants their way.
Yeah.
Okay? That's why you got all this protesting and all this marching and all this stuff. And I happen to be the oldest guy in here. So I never believed in my life that I'd see the junk that I see going on in America. Never in my life did I ever see that. The first little picture of this we had was in 1960. I saw my first protest. We were on our way to Maryland, and they were laying in the street blocking traffic. Now, how stupid is that? The only reason they kept from getting run over was because people cared for them.
Right.
Or they just run over them. Okay?
Yeah.
Speed bump.
No, it's true.
But that's what I'm trying to say. We got to understand God's got a plan here. We got to do what Jesus says.
Yep.
He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, your strength. Forget all the other junk.
Right.
If you love him, you're going to do what he says.
Right.
If you do what he says, you're going to be able to love your neighbor.
Yep. I follow author Bob Goff. He's a Christian, and he wrote yesterday, God said to love your neighbor. He didn't say it would be easy, but he said it would work.
Yeah,
you know. So, but again, if we love him, everything else will fall into place.
I watched some of the march, and it's immaturity and foolishness, right? Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child. But the whole thing, everybody that spoke had something different that they were complaining about. So it was not anything of unity. It was just a bunch of people expressing their opinions.
Yep.
And opinions are not necessarily based on any kind of fact or structure.
No, it's just how you feel.
Right.
It's your emotion,
there's
right?
a saying in the world about opinions.
We all have one.
Yeah,
Everybody's got one. Everybody's got one. Great. And going back, if we love him, then we will seek him. And we will seek out his word, right? And that brought me to Matthew 7 and 8, which is ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks the door will be opened. And then I just had another little thought. When we open the word, we are searching for the answers, we are seeking and knocking on the door to heaven. I feel like I'm rushing. I'm not? Okay. That's good. Right. All right. Gosh, I feel like all these are just constantly going one into the next, because the next it says, it is more respectable to be poor and pure than rich and perverse. That's in the Passion. The NIV says, better a poor man whose walk is blameless than a rich man whose ways are perverse. And it had a little note here for Proverbs 19:1, better a poor man whose walk is blameless than a fool whose lips are perverse.
That's true.
So, and we learned all about what a fool was, right? For me, this verse, I was looking to see what different words meant. So poor meant having little or no money. Pure was free from anything of a different, inferior, or contaminating kind. Free from extraneous matter. free from anything extra, free from anything that isn't of him. Somebody who's rich is having wealth or great possessions, abundantly supplied with resources, means, or funds. But if you're perverse, you willfully determine or dispose to go counter to what is expected or desired, contrary. If you're perverse, you do a 180 from God, right? You do completely different from what he says. I looked up the word respectable because one of the translations used the word respectable in place of pure or blameless. And it's worthy of respect or esteem, worthy of good social standing or reputation. And blameless is free from or not deserving blame. Somebody who's guiltless. Somebody who walks knowing that they are walking in his righteousness. Not that they are righteous per se, but they walk uprightly. They walk looking forward, not down, not up, not to either side. And somebody who's a fool is silly or stupid person, a person who lacks judgment or sense. Somebody who just goes about without really thinking through. Disregard. A few years ago, I saw a cartoon somebody posted on Facebook about liberals. And it was the definition of a liberal. And it said somebody whose mind is so open that their brain falls out. And when I wrote down fool, it made me think of that, because I'm thinking somebody who has gotten to the point where they lack their judgment. They don't think for themselves. They just allow somebody to think for themselves. So I wrote down this little note. It says, better to have nothing and a heart that is free from anything extra than to have wealth and great possessions and is persistent or obstinate in what is wrong. Somebody who just, I have all the money in the world so I can do whatever I want. I mean, we see this all the time. Yeah. And I struggle with seeing all these celebrities, people who have done nothing of.
Yeah. By stroke of fate, filthy rich.
Right.
And their mind fell out somewhere along the line.
Right, but people follow them because they do these crazy things. And, politicians, celebrities, whatever it is, they just, they have all this money because they've done these crazy things, or they were a politician, and, you basically can sit there and amass mountains of money by doing absolutely nothing if you are, yeah. And they do whatever they want. And then I think, I'm a stepmom. I have a 10-year-old stepdaughter, and I think to myself, God, I'm like, how do you navigate this, and thinking about children that we're going to have, how, Lord only knows what it's going to be like down the line, it's going to be crazier, but even if we're poor in our physical things, but we have a pure heart towards God, then we will be as long as our walk is blameless, as long as we can say, look, we did this because we felt this was the right way to go, because we felt God was talking to us and saying this is the way to go, then I think then our kids will say, this will be a good example for us. So that is all I have for today. So, I think I'm early.
Can I say something?
Pastor, you can say whatever.
I'm going to tell you the best way to raise kids. I almost cussed. The best thing to do is quit complaining.
Yeah.
because you start your kids out with a negative outlook. And the best thing when you're raising kids is don't complain about everything, because God brings things along your way to train you. And it isn't always comfortable to your flesh or the way you think. The bottom line is, we should ask God every time we see something, what are you trying to teach me? What are you trying to show me? Because the truth of the matter is, we're not quite as smart as we like to think we are, you know. And if we pay attention, this is the whole thing I've been trying to say lately, is if you can't hear God, you're going to be in trouble. If you cannot hear, because God is dealing with everybody, and there's so much talk and so much noise and so much distraction, you got to listen to see what he says. I want to see all your kids. I wish I knew, what's that song they play all the time on Caleb? Younger Me? Is that it? Younger Me?
Yeah.
I wish I knew then what I know now.
Yeah.
Okay? Younger me? Younger me wasn't quite as smart as older me is. And one of the things we have to learn is we always look, when you're young, who wants to hang around with your grandfather? Kind of stupid thinking. But the truth of the matter is, he may have a little more wisdom chucked away in there that could help you out in life. So.
All right. Thank you all.